Part 1: The Underestimated Arrival. The Quiet Storm. Nobody noticed when Corporal Jenna Reeves stepped off the transport shuttle. Standing barely 5 feet 4 inches tall, with short brown hair and tired eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses, she looked more like a librarian than a soldier. The other recruits towered over her, massive beings from high-gravity worlds with muscles like steel cables and reflexes faster than human sight. First impressions. General Marcus Thorne watched from his office window as the new batch of recruits assembled in the courtyard below. His weathered face bore scars from decades of military service, and his gray eyes had seen more battles than most beings could imagine. When his aide pointed out the small human among the group, Thorne barely glanced up from his reports. "Another human volunteer," he muttered, signing another document. "Put her in support duties. We can't afford to lose personnel to the beasts on the first day." The aide, a tall reptilian officer named Lieutenant Voss, hissed softly in agreement. "Sir, her file shows no combat experience. No genetic modifications. No psychic abilities. I'm not sure why Command sent her here." Thorne finally looked up, studying the small figure in the courtyard. Jenna stood quietly at the back of the group, not trying to assert herself or make friends. While other recruits flexed their muscles and compared their various natural weapons, she simply observed. The Academy's purpose. The Nexus Military Academy for Xenobeast training was humanity's most ambitious project. After discovering that certain alien predators could be bonded with sentient beings for military purposes, every species in the galaxy had tried to master the technique. Most failed spectacularly. The creatures were too dangerous, too intelligent, too proud to submit to conventional training methods. The facility housed over 50 different species of apex predators, each one capable of destroying an entire squad of soldiers. They came from worlds where survival meant constant battle, where only the strongest and smartest lived to see another day. These weren't just animals, they were living weapons with minds sharp enough to outthink most military tacticians. Orientation Day. During orientation, Commander Helen Burke, a stern woman with cybernetic implants along her left arm, addressed the new recruits. Her voice echoed through the massive briefing hall as holographic displays showed the various beasts they would encounter. 60% of you will wash out in the first week, she announced coldly. Of the remaining 40%, half will be hospitalized. The lucky ones will only lose limbs. The unlucky ones will become food. Jenna sat in the back row, taking notes in a small tablet while other recruits whispered nervously to each other. She didn't flinch when the commander showed footage of a Corvan Razorback tearing through reinforced steel, or when the Twilight Stalker demonstrated its ability to phase through solid matter. The doubt. After the briefing, several recruits approached General Thorne to express their concerns about having a weak link in their group. A massive four-armed warrior from the Titan colonies named Sergeant Rex Bronson spoke for the group. "Sir, no disrespect to the human, but she's going to get someone killed," Bronson rumbled, his voice like grinding stone. "These beasts can smell fear and weakness. They'll use her to break out and attack the rest of us." Thorne considered this carefully. The sergeant wasn't wrong, the creatures they worked with were extraordinarily intelligent and would exploit any advantage they could find. But something about the quiet human intrigued him. There was a calmness about her that seemed unusual for someone facing such dangerous prospects. Jenna's preparation. While other recruits spent their first evening boasting about their combat achievements or worrying about the challenges ahead, Jenna quietly visited the Academy's library. She spent hours reading about each species they would encounter, studying their behavioral patterns, their social structures, their hunting methods. Dr. Victor Kane, the chief xenobiologist, found her there at 2 a.m, surrounded by data tablets and research files. "Couldn't sleep?" he asked kindly. Dr. Kane was an older man with kind eyes and a gentle manner that seemed out of place in such a military facility. "I wanted to understand them better," Jenna replied simply. "Everyone talks about these creatures like they're just weapons, but they're intelligent beings with their own cultures and motivations. If we're going to work together, shouldn't we try to understand each other? Dr. Kane smiled. In his 20 years at the academy, he'd never heard a recruit speak about the beasts with such respect and curiosity. Most saw them as either tools to be mastered or threats to be conquered. The first challenge. The next morning brought their first real test. Each recruit would approach a contained Nexus prowler, a sleek, panther-like predator with crystalline spines and telepathic abilities. The creature had already sent 3 experienced handlers to the medical bay with severe psychic trauma. As Jenna's turn approached, the other recruits stepped back, some making bets on how quickly she'd be defeated. General Thorne watched from the observation deck, his expression unreadable. The Nexus prowler crouched in the center of its containment field, its 6 legs coiled like springs. Its multifaceted eyes fixed on Jenna as she approached, and its spines began to glow with dangerous energy. But instead of fear, something unexpected happened. Jenna smiled. Part 2, First Contact Protocol. The Unexpected Approach. General Marcus Thorne leaned forward in the observation deck, his scarred hands gripping the railing. Below, Corporal Jenna Reeves stood at the edge of the containment field, facing the Nexus prowler with nothing but a standard ration pack and that strange, gentle smile. "She's going to get herself killed," muttered Lieutenant Voss, his reptilian features twisted with concern. The last handler who tried this approach ended up in a coma for 3 weeks. The Nexus prowler was a magnificent and terrifying sight. Its sleek, midnight blue body rippled with muscle beneath crystalline spines that pulsed with bioluminescent energy. 6 powerful legs kept it in a perfect hunting crouch, while its multifaceted eyes tracked every movement. Most disturbing of all were its telepathic abilities. It could project fear directly into an opponent's mind, paralyzing them with terror before striking. Breaking protocol. Commander Helen Burke's voice crackled through the intercom. "Recruit Reeves, maintain standard approach distance. Do not lower the containment field until you've established dominance protocols." But Jenna wasn't following protocol. Instead of taking the aggressive stance that trainers use to assert authority, she sat down cross-legged just outside the energy barrier. The other recruits gasped, some in disbelief, others in horror. "What is she doing?" Sergeant Rex Bronson rumbled, his 4 arms crossed in disapproval. "You don't show weakness to apex predators. They'll tear you apart." Jenna opened her ration pack slowly, deliberately. Inside was a standard military meal: synthesized protein, nutrient bars, and a small packet of something that looked like dried fruit. She took a small bite of the protein bar, chewed thoughtfully, then made a face. "These really are terrible," she said quietly, though her voice carried clearly through the chamber's acoustics. "I bet you get better food than this." The prowler's response. The Nexus prowler tilted its head, confusion replacing aggression. In its experience, potential prey either fled in terror or attacked with weapons blazing. This small human was doing neither. Instead, she was complaining about her food. Dr. Victor Kane, who had been monitoring the creature's biometric readings, noticed something remarkable. "General, look at this. The prowler's stress hormones are dropping. Its telepathic emissions are decreasing to almost normal levels." "Impossible," General Thorne muttered. "Those readings must be wrong." But they weren't wrong. The creature's crystalline spines had stopped glowing, and its posture had shifted from a hunting crouch to something more resembling curiosity. An unconventional conversation. Jenna continued eating, occasionally glancing up at the prowler with mild interest, as if it were a neighbor she'd encountered during lunch. After a few minutes, she held up the packet of dried fruit. "I wonder if you'd like these," she mused. "They're probably the only decent thing in here. My grandmother used to make something similar, but hers actually tasted good." She stood up slowly, no sudden movements, and approached the control panel that regulated the containment field. Every person in the observation deck held their breath. "Recruit Reeves, step away from those controls immediately." Commander Burke's voice was sharp with alarm. But General Thorne raised his hand. Wait. Let her proceed. Sir, with respect, that creature has injured dozens of handlers. And yet it's not showing any signs of aggression now, Thorne replied, his military mind recognizing something unprecedented. Dr. Kane, what are your readings showing? The Prowler's brain activity suggests it's in a state of, well, I'd almost call it fascination. It's never encountered behavior like this before. The moment of truth. Jenna's hand hovered over the containment field controls. The Nexus Prowler watched her intently, its 6 legs still coiled but no longer in attack position. Its multifaceted eyes seemed almost curious. I'm going to lower this barrier, Jenna said, speaking both to the creature and to the observers above. Not because I want to dominate you, but because I think you're tired of being treated like a monster. She pressed the button. The energy field flickered and died. The Prowler could have struck instantly. Its reflexes were faster than human sight, its claws capable of shredding steel. Instead, it took a single step forward, then stopped. Jenna held out the packet of dried fruit. These are called raisins. They're from a plant on my home world. Sweet, but not too sweet. The bridge. What happened next would be discussed in military academies across the galaxy for generations to come. The Nexus Prowler, one of the most dangerous apex predators known to science, lowered its head and gently took the offering from Jenna's hand. The creature's telepathic abilities, which had been used as weapons against every previous handler, now carried a different message. Dr. Kane's equipment registered something that had never been recorded before: curiosity, gratitude, and the beginning of trust. Incredible, Dr. Kane whispered. It's not just accepting the food. It's trying to communicate. The telepathic patterns are completely different from anything we've seen. Jenna smiled again, that same gentle expression that had seemed so out of place in a military facility. I think you understand more than anyone gives you credit for. You're not just a weapon, are you? You're a person. The Prowler's response was to settle into a more relaxed position, its crystalline spines dimming to a soft, steady glow. For the first time since its capture, the creature seemed at peace. Changing perspectives. In the observation deck, the mood had shifted from skepticism to amazement. Sergeant Bronson's 4 arms had uncrossed, and even his perpetually aggressive expression had softened. How did she know? He asked quietly. How did she know it would work? General Thorne was asking himself the same question. In his 30 years of military service, he'd never seen anything like this. The implications were staggering. If Jenna's approach could be replicated, it would revolutionize everything they knew about working with apex predators. But even as he watched this remarkable scene unfold, Thorne knew that the real test was yet to come. The Nexus Prowler was just the beginning. In the deeper levels of the facility, far more dangerous creatures awaited, creatures that had never shown even a hint of cooperation with any sentient species. As Jenna continued her quiet conversation with the Prowler, sharing her simple meal and treating the deadly predator like an equal, General Thorne made a decision that would change the course of the entire program. Dr. Kane, he said quietly, I want you to personally oversee Recruit Reeves' training. And I want daily reports on her progress. Yes, sir. But sir, what if the other creatures don't respond the same way? Thorne watched as Jenna gently stroked the Prowler's crystalline spines, the creature purring like a massive, deadly cat. Then we'll find out just how remarkable this human really is. Part 3, The Breakthrough. Deeper Challenges. Dr. Victor Kane had spent sleepless nights analyzing the data from Jenna's encounter with the Nexus Prowler. The readings were unlike anything in his 20 years of xenobiology research. The creature's brain patterns showed not just acceptance, but something approaching genuine affection for the small human. The implications are staggering, he explained to General Thorne as they walked through the facility's secure corridors. If we can understand how she does this, we could revolutionize our entire approach to apex predator integration. They stopped before a massive reinforced door marked with warning symbols in 17 different languages. Beyond it lay the facility's most dangerous resident, a Void Reaper, a creature from the dark spaces between stars that had never shown anything but pure, murderous hostility toward any living being. The Void Reaper. The creature was a nightmare-given form. 12 feet tall, with a body that seemed to absorb light itself, the Void Reaper possessed tentacles that could phase through matter and a mind that projected pure terror. It had killed its previous 3 handlers before they could even activate the containment protocols. No one has successfully interacted with this creature, Dr. Kane said, his voice tight with concern. It doesn't just attack, it seems to enjoy causing fear and pain. Some of my colleagues believe it feeds on negative emotions. General Thorne studied the creature through the reinforced observation window. The Void Reaper hung suspended in a web of energy fields, its tentacles writhing slowly in patterns that hurt to look at directly. And you want to send Recruit Reeves in there? I want to understand what makes her different, Dr. Kane replied. The Nexus Prowler isn't just cooperating with her, it's actually happy. Its stress hormones have dropped to levels we've never recorded. It's eating regularly, sleeping peacefully, and showing signs of genuine contentment. Jenna's preparation. While the scientists debated protocols and safety measures, Jenna spent her time in the facility's archives, reading everything she could find about the Void Reaper. What she discovered troubled her deeply. The creature had been captured during a raid on a research station. Its species were lone hunters, living in the cold emptiness between solar systems. They were intelligent, possibly more so than humans, but their psychology was completely alien. It's been alone for 3 years, she told Dr. Kane when he found her in the archives. 3 years in captivity, with no contact with its own kind. No wonder it's hostile. Jenna, this creature has killed people. Trained handlers with decades of experience. Because they treated it like a monster, she replied simply. How would you react if aliens captured you, locked you in a cage, and sent armed guards to intimidate you every day? Dr. Kane paused. In all his research, he'd never considered the psychological impact of captivity on these creatures. They were studied as weapons, as resources to be exploited, but rarely as individuals with their own needs and emotions. The encounter. The containment chamber was different from the Prowler's habitat. Instead of energy barriers, the Void Reaper was held by a complex web of gravitational fields that kept it suspended in the center of a spherical room. The walls were lined with sensors and automated defense systems. Jenna entered slowly, carrying nothing but a small device that Dr. Kane had given her, a translator that could convert basic emotional concepts into the electromagnetic frequencies that Void Reapers used for communication. "Hello," she said, her voice echoing in the chamber. "My name is Jenna. I know you probably don't want to see another human, but I was hoping we could talk." The Void Reaper's response was immediate and terrifying. Waves of fear and hatred crashed over Jenna like a psychic tsunami. The creature's tentacles lashed against its restraints, and its body seemed to grow darker, absorbing even more light from the chamber. But Jenna didn't flee. Instead, she sat down on the floor and began to speak. The conversation. "I've been reading about your species," she said, her voice steady despite the creature's psychic assault. "You're nomads, aren't you? Travelers who move between the stars. I can't imagine what it must be like to be trapped in one place for so long." The Void Reaper's attacks intensified, but Jenna continued talking, using the translator to project her own emotions: empathy, understanding, and surprisingly, a deep sadness. "I know what it's like to be alone," she continued. "Growing up, I was always the quiet one, the one who didn't fit in. People looked at me and saw someone weak, someone who didn't matter. I imagine you feel the same way here." Something in her words, or perhaps in the emotional undertones the translator was broadcasting, caused the Void Reaper to pause. Its psychic attacks didn't stop, but they became less focused, more confused. The breakthrough. For the next hour, Jenna simply talked. She told the creature about her childhood, about feeling isolated and misunderstood. She spoke about her fascination with the stars, her dream of exploring the galaxy, and her belief that every intelligent being deserved respect and understanding. Gradually, the Void Reaper's hostility began to change. The waves of fear and hatred were replaced by something more complex: confusion, curiosity, and beneath it all, a profound loneliness that matched Jenna's own. "You miss the stars, don't you?" she said finally. "The freedom to move, to explore, to be yourself." The Void Reaper's response came not as a psychic attack, but as a complex pattern of emotions that the translator struggled to interpret. Longing, isolation, and something that might have been hope. The connection. Dr. Kane watched in amazement as his instruments registered something unprecedented. The Void Reaper's aggressive postures were relaxing, and its psychic emissions were shifting from hostile to merely defensive. "It's working," he whispered into his communicator. "General, you need to see this." On the chamber floor, Jenna had stood up and was slowly approaching the suspended creature. The Void Reaper watched her with what could only be described as intense curiosity. "I can't free you," Jenna said honestly. "I wish I could, but I don't have that authority. But I can promise you this, as long as I'm here, you won't be alone anymore. You won't be treated like a monster." The Void Reaper extended one of its tentacles toward her. For a moment, everyone watching held their breath, expecting the creature to attack. Instead, the tentacle stopped just short of touching Jenna's outstretched hand. The gesture was unmistakable. It was reaching for connection, for contact with another intelligent being who saw it as more than just a weapon. The transformation. Over the following days, the change in the Void Reaper was remarkable. Its aggressive behaviors ceased entirely, and it began responding to commands not out of fear, but out of what appeared to be genuine cooperation. More importantly, other handlers began reporting similar successes with their assigned creatures. Word of Jenna's method spread through the facility, and handlers who had previously relied on intimidation and force began experimenting with communication and empathy. General Thorne watched it all with growing amazement and concern. If Jenna's approach was truly revolutionary, it would change everything, not just about the Academy, but about humanity's relationship with the dangerous creatures they encountered throughout the galaxy. But he also knew that the ultimate test was yet to come. In the deepest levels of the facility, sealed behind the most advanced security systems in the galaxy, waited creatures so dangerous that even looking at them required special training. And if Jenna's methods could work with those nightmares, then perhaps humanity had found something more valuable than weapons. Perhaps they had found a way to truly communicate with the universe itself. Part 4: Defying Expectations. The War Council. Colonel Richard Stone had seen enough battlefields to know when something was about to change the course of history. Standing in the Academy's main briefing room, surrounded by holographic displays showing combat data and creature statistics, he watched General Thorne pace back and forth with obvious agitation. "Explain to me again how a recruit with no combat training has managed to achieve what our best handlers couldn't accomplish in years," Stone said, his weathered face creased with skepticism. Dr. Kane activated a series of displays showing behavioral analysis charts. "The data is undeniable, Colonel. Since Recruit Reeves began working with the creatures, we've seen a 93% reduction in aggressive incidents. More importantly, the creatures are showing signs of genuine cooperation rather than mere compliance." Stone studied the charts with a tactician's eye. Numbers didn't lie, but they didn't always tell the whole story either. "And you believe this empathy approach can be scaled up? Taught to other handlers?" "That's what we need to determine," General Thorne interjected. "Which is why I'm authorizing the next phase of testing. The Deep Vault." 3 levels beneath the main academy lay the facility's most classified section, the Deep Vault. Here, behind layers of quantum encryption and reality-warping containment fields, lived creatures so dangerous that most personnel weren't even allowed to know they existed. Colonel Stone descended into these depths with Jenna, noting how the small human seemed completely unaware of the magnitude of what awaited her. She walked with that same quiet confidence she'd shown since arriving, as if facing cosmic nightmares was just another day at the office. "Recruit Reeves," Stone said as they approached the final security checkpoint, "what we're about to show you has killed trained soldiers, experienced handlers, and even some of our most advanced AI systems. Are you certain you want to proceed?" Jenna looked up at him with those calm, intelligent eyes. "Colonel, respectfully, everything here has killed people because it's been treated like a weapon instead of a person. I'd like to try a different approach." The quantum horror. The creature they were about to face defied easy description. Designated as Subject Omega, it existed partially in normal space and partially in quantum dimensions that human minds couldn't fully comprehend. When it moved, reality seemed to bend around it, creating visual distortions that could drive observers insane. "It's from a dimension where thought and matter are the same thing," Dr. Kane explained through the intercom. "Our best theories suggest it experiences reality as we experience dreams, malleable, symbolic, governed by emotional logic rather than physical laws." Through the observation windows, they could see Subject Omega floating in a specially designed chamber that existed in 17 dimensions simultaneously. The creature appeared as a constantly shifting mass of crystalline structures and flowing energy, beautiful and terrifying in equal measure. The approach. Jenna entered the chamber through a dimensional lock that sealed itself behind her. She carried no weapons, no protective gear, just her quiet determination and a small music player that Dr. Kane had specially modified to work across dimensional barriers. "Hello," she said, her voice carrying through the quantum foam that surrounded the creature. "I'm Jenna. I know this is probably confusing, having someone from my dimension visiting yours." Subject Omega's response was immediate and overwhelming. Reality twisted around Jenna as the creature projected its confusion and terror directly into the fabric of spacetime. She found herself experiencing fragments of alien memories, vast crystalline cities that existed only in thought, beings of pure energy dancing through dimensions like dolphins through water. But instead of being driven mad by the experience, Jenna simply sat down and began to process what she was seeing. Understanding chaos. "You're homesick," she said finally, her voice filled with wonder rather than fear. "You're not violent, you're just trying to go home, and every time you try, these dimensional barriers stop you." She activated the music player, and soft melodies began to fill the chamber. But these weren't ordinary songs. Dr. Kane had converted them into mathematical harmonies that could exist across multiple dimensions simultaneously. The effect on Subject Omega was immediate. The chaotic energy patterns began to stabilize, and the reality distortions became less violent. The creature was responding to the music, but more than that, it was responding to the emotional content Jenna had somehow managed to convey. The dance. What happened next was unlike anything in the Academy's records. Subject Omega began to move in patterns that matched the music's rhythm, its crystalline structures reshaping themselves into increasingly beautiful and complex forms. It was dancing, expressing joy and gratitude in ways that transcended dimensional boundaries. Jenna stood up and began to move with it, her simple human movement somehow harmonizing with the creature's reality-bending dance. Together, they created something that was part communication, part art, and part miracle. Colonel Stone watched from the observation deck, his military training warring with what his eyes were telling him. "This is impossible," he muttered. "That creature has been classified as a Class Omega threat. It should have destroyed her instantly." "It tried," Dr. Kane replied, studying his readings with amazement. "But instead of fighting the dimensional distortions, she adapted to them. She's actually learning to perceive reality the way it does." The new protocol. Over the following weeks, Jenna worked with Subject Omega to develop new communication protocols. What they discovered revolutionized the Academy's understanding of interdimensional beings. The creature wasn't trying to destroy reality, it was trying to repair damage caused by dimensional containment fields. Working together, they developed a new type of containment that allowed the creature to exist comfortably in normal space while maintaining its connection to its home dimension. More importantly, they proved that even the most alien minds could find common ground through patience and understanding. Colonel Stone found himself rewriting tactical manuals that had been considered definitive for decades. If creatures like Subject Omega could be turned from threats into allies, the implications for military strategy were staggering. The ripple effect. Word of Jenna's successes spread throughout the academy and beyond. Handlers who had relied on fear and intimidation began adopting her methods. Creatures that had been considered unmanageable started showing signs of cooperation and even affection for their human partners. But perhaps most importantly, the Academy's fundamental mission began to change. Instead of simply training weapons, they were now fostering partnerships between species that had never communicated before. General Thorne called Jenna to his office as reports of successful bondings poured in from across the facility. "Recruit Reeves," he said, his scarred face showing a mixture of amazement and concern, "what you've accomplished here is remarkable. But I need to know, are you prepared for what comes next?" "What comes next, sir?" Thorne activated a holographic display showing star charts and fleet movements. "The Admiralty has been watching our progress. They want to test these new partnerships in real combat situations. Are you and your bonded creatures ready for war?" Jenna looked at the star charts, thinking of the Nexus Prowler that now purred when she entered its habitat, the Void Reaper that had begun sharing its memories of the spaces between stars, and Subject Omega that had taught her to see reality through interdimensional eyes. "With respect, sir," she said quietly, "I don't think we're ready for war. But I think we might be ready for something much more important. Which is peace." Colonel Stone, who had been listening from the doorway, stepped forward. "Recruit, peace is a luxury we can't afford. The galaxy is full of threats that won't be stopped by empathy and understanding." Jenna nodded respectfully. "You're right, Colonel. But maybe some of those threats exist because we've never tried to understand them. Maybe it's time to find out what happens when we approach the galaxy as friends instead of conquerors." As the debate continued, none of them could know that their conversation was being monitored by intelligence agencies across the galaxy. Jenna's methods had already begun to change the balance of power among the stars, and there were forces that would do anything to prevent that change from spreading. The real test was yet to come.